Good morning. It's good to see everyone today. Let's go ahead and make our way in for our class this morning. It is good to see everyone. I know there's still a few people making their way in, but that's okay. We're glad to have you here. I know it's cold and it's wet, so it makes it a little bit more challenging to get in here. So it's good to see. Yeah, man, is it? Is that Daryl Barker? It's good to see you. Welcome, Daryl. It's good to have you back. All right. So they thought maybe, if we have a delay or something, we can bump the last guy. So I took the last lesson, but it didn't happen. There wasn't any delays, so you're stuck with me here the last morning of our series on the elders are teaching, and elders plus Wes. One Wes wasn't enough, so we gave you two. But this is our last series of this last lesson in this series, and we've got some more classes coming up next quarter. But we've been talking about working and serving together, and today I want to talk about being partners in the gospel. So I'll start off with a little bit of a story. Many years ago, as you can see by the picture, I was much younger. I was a tactical coordinator on a P-3 Orion. That's the plane up there. You see the picture. And the P-3 crew had 3 pilots, 2 flight engineers, 1 navigator, 1 tactical coordinator, which is what my job was, 2 acoustic sensor operators, 1 non-acoustic or radar operator, 1 ordnance technician, and 1 in-flight technician. And we fly missions anywhere from 6 hours to 12 hours long doing surveillance. We were getting ready to go to the Persian Gulf, so I've given you a map of the Persian Gulf. You can see there's a lot of things going on there. There's a lot of different countries. There's Kuwait, there's Iran. You can't see Iraq in this picture. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, a lot of different countries. I've been training for about 9 months to go to the Persian Gulf and operate there. A lot of ways to get in trouble and do things wrong in the Persian Gulf. As a junior officer in the military, you do not want to be in the news, right? I didn't want to be famous after this deployment. And so I want to make sure I didn't start any international incidents or anything like that. So we trained hard so we could do our mission and not cause any problems. But I get there, and the plan was for our crew was the first crew from our squadron there. We were to land in Oman, where we're going to operate out of, and I'd have a day to get acclimated to the time zone, then a day to fly a mission with another squadron to observe, and then a third day go flying with my crew that I've been training with for 9 months. That's a great plan, but it didn't happen. I show up, and they say, "You're flying tomorrow with this other squadron." Guys I'd never met before, because their TACO had to leave early for some other reasons. And so from going from having a day to get acclimated to the time zone, a day to observe a mission, to a day to flying with my crew, I was landing one night, and the next morning I was flying a mission in the Persian Gulf with a crew with guys I did not meet until the morning of the briefing. So, but there's a reason you have standards, right? We were able to do this. The mission went well. The guys were great. There was a good crew. They'd been there for a while. They kind of knew the lay of the land, knew what to expect on the missions. It went great. But why were we able to do that? And that's because we had the same purpose. I was able to show up in a strange country meet some guys the morning of a mission and fly a mission with them because we had the same purpose. Our purpose was to do the peacekeeping missions in the Persian Gulf without starting an international incident, right? But we had that same purpose. We were able to work together as partners. So what do you think of when you think of a partner? Think of your spouse. My wife is a great partner. Your partners at work, sports partner. Sometimes people, if in business, they have a business partner. I asked Trey Baker about partners in the police work. We all watch police shows, and they make a big deal about partners. He said it's not as consistent as they show it on TV, but there are times where they have partners. And he said the times he gave me was you may have an experienced officer with a beginner. That makes sense. You're showing them the ropes. This is how you do it, right? You may have two peers with similar skill sets just working together. Two guys are both good at their job, working together. Another type of partner he mentioned was two people with complementary skill sets. He mentioned you may have one guy who's really good at talking to people and getting information, and one guy that's really good at all the administrative stuff that has to be done in an investigation. Those two will work together. So different types of partners, and how do we partner together? But we're talking about how do we partner in the gospel. So let's go to Philippians 1, 4 through 5. Always in every prayer of mine for you, all making my prayer with joy, because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. Right? He's talking about being partners in the gospel. What does it mean to be partners in the gospel? Hopefully that we're working together, right? We're not going off and trying to do this alone. Yes, Josie? We have the same faith, right? We have the same faith. We have a common goal. Charles said a common goal, right? I know Charles has played a few rounds of golf in his time, right? Yeah. What if you have a partner who's playing a different hole than you? We had a lot of that. We had Charles said we had a lot of that.
We had no fault golf.
Yeah.
My fault. Hey, I was doing really
yeah.
good.
A lot of no fault golf, right? But we want to have our partners looking at the same book as us, looking at the gospel, looking at the Bible. What does God tell us to do? We want to play by the same rules, the same goals, right? A phrase that gets used a lot is partner with a purpose. Now that's used sometime in business. A lot of charities use that, partner and purpose, right? But our partnership is in the gospel. Our partnership is how do we work together? We've talked a lot about how we work. So I kind of want to talk about when we started this lesson series, several months ago, the elders agreed on our topic for this. Jay Maley kind of, keyed up the topic. We made suggestions. We talked about it. And this is the topic we agreed on. And then we all said, okay, we worked on the scheduling, who's going to take what week. And we told each other our topics, but we really didn't coordinate the details. Because I don't think we really needed to, right? So let's kind of go over what's been taught so far. Jay Maley, he taught about love, about not growing weary of doing good and looking out for the interest of others. He also listed what a healthy church looks like. Troy Thompson talked about highlighting the significance of taking ownership, right? He used the example of Dorcas and the Good Samaritan. Ask us, do we know what our role is? Don Salmons gave us a lesson on encouragement You know, one of the verses he used was Hebrews 3:13, but encourage one another daily as long as it's called today, so that no one of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. Don also talked about taking action, and that our actions can be louder than words. Bill Johnson spoke about a lesson about the work of elders. What is the work that the elders do? You know, to defend the truth, to protect the flock, to encourage members to remain faithful, to teach, to live example, but most importantly also to pray. Then Alan Reed taught a lesson on why serve others. He did a good job of pointing out God is glorified when we serve others. And also, as part of our love for God, Alan also touched on how our faith results in service and our service results in faith. What comes first? They go together, right? As a result of my faith, I want to serve. I know in my own experience, the more I serve, the more it grows my faith. Wes Arnold, since we had 8 weeks and 7 elders, we thought Wes could do a great addition to that lineup. And he came in and he talked about the fields are ripe for harvest, right? And he also talked about putting Christ before our own holiness, not holiness before Christ. Our pursuit is Christ. And then last week, Drew Slatton talked about who are you and how we are called to do God's work. He also touched on contentment and also that none of us were good soil until we were nurtured. Somebody had to nurture that soil. And so it takes people to nurture the soil. So if you look at these topics, we didn't coordinate what we're going to talk about very closely. We did. There was some alignment, right? But since we had the same purpose, I feel like these topics have aligned together very well because we had 8 people talking on the same topic with the same purpose. The same purpose is to encourage working together and serving together. Let's talk about partners in the gospel. I'm going to read through this, Philippians 1, 3 through 11. I thank my God in all my remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine, for you all making my prayer with joy, because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. And I'm sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. It is right for me to feel this way about you all, because I told you in my heart, for you are all partakers with me of grace, both in my imprisonment and the defense and confirmation of the gospel. For God is my witness, how I yearn for you all with the affection of Christ Jesus. And it is my prayer that your love may abound more and more with knowledge and with all discernment, so that you may approve what is excellent and be so pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God. Oops, back up here. So I want to talk about the first part of this, because of your partnership. Paul is writing to the Philippians. These aren't the only verses where he refers to some of these working together, though. But he recognizes the partnership he has with the Philippians. He may be somewhere else. He's not with them. But he still has that partnership with them in the gospel. He knows that whatever they're doing where they are, they're working to promote the gospel. And that's what Paul is doing where he is. He also talks about, as those partnerships in the gospel, we participate in the same grace. That same grace that Paul has, the Philippians have. The same grace that Philippians have, Paul has. We all need grace. We would not be here if we did not have the grace of God. We would not have a hope for salvation without that grace. but we also need grace from each other. We all, do partners always agree? Okay. We don't always agree, right? But sometimes we need to give grace to our partners. There have been times that my wife has had to show me grace. We've been married for over 30 years, and once or twice, she's had to show me grace. And fortunately, she's a very graceful lady, right? And she does that. Some of you in this room had to show me grace when I do things wrong, right? But as we work together, we want to keep our eyes on the common goal. Our common goal is not on how we do it, but what we're trying to do. There's a lot of different ways to accomplish the same goal. The key is, are we picking the absolute best way, or are we working together to accomplish that goal? And I hope we can focus on working together. We'll grow that partnership in the gospel. We'll grow that grace we have for each other. We'll grow that love. I'm sorry, I skipped my slide on grace, right? But it's right for me to feel this way about you all, because I hold you in my heart, for you are all partakers of me with the same grace. Two are better than one. I'm sure we've read this before, but we're going to read from Ecclesiastes 4:9-10. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? I've got a couple examples here, but before I share those, do anybody here have an example where two is better than one, or maybe 100's better than 10, that we've seen in this congregation recently? Yes?
When Dave needed his heart transplant,
Uh-huh.
the whole congregation was praying for that.
Right.
And even people, other Christians throughout the world.
Right.
And that, brought the end results, and it was a happy time.
Right. So Darlene brought up when Dave needed his heart transplant, the whole congregation prayed. We know Darlene and Dave were praying, right? But we all prayed, right? We wanted success there. And that's one reason we share prayer requests. And that is the reason we share prayer requests with the congregation, because it is better for all of us to pray for those who need it. And we always have somebody in our family who needs our prayers. And so we want to share that and pray with them. Okay, who remembers this? Right? This was in July. Hurricane Beryl ripped through here and, caused a big mess, right? Some of the members of our congregation had some significant damage to their home, right? Some of us were without power for several days, but also the church building was no significant damage, but we had a pretty big mess. What if 3 people had shown up to clean that mess? How long do you think it would have taken them? It probably would have taken 3 or 4 days, right? And while we were there, I tried to count, but you guys wouldn't stand still long enough for me to count. So I'm guessing we had between 50 to 70 people. I'm just kind of, I don't know, maybe a West Arnold count would say we had 300 people. But we had a lot of people there. And it took us, I think we were there less than 3 hours, right? And we got it done. And and I know I left there thinking, that was great. We worked. I wasn't worn out. I could still go on about my day and do other things. Some of us stayed and played pickleball afterwards, right? And so I learned another game that I'm not very good at. So, it's another good thing about the day. But by working all of us together, right, we got that done very quickly and very timely, right? And we still could go about and do other things the rest of the day. And also, I want you to look at this picture in the lower right. Look at the age difference in that picture. I won't tell you how old the oldest person is in that picture, but he's significantly older than younger people in that picture, right? Isn't it a beautiful thing when multiple generations in our family can work together and serve together? I know I have been blessed through my years of being able to work with people who are older than me, people who are younger than me, people with different backgrounds from me. But I think this is a beautiful example of this congregation coming back. We had partnership with the same purpose. We wanted to restore our facilities so we can come together and worship. And there was no pride, there was no debate. It was just, people just showed up and said, what can I do? And then got ready to help. And this is something we introduced not long ago, was our children's ministry team. Right? So we recruited these ladies to work on our children's ministry. Right? They are all working together. The children's ministry, if we leave it to one person, is a huge job. And I don't think anyone has the bandwidth, I guess, to take that on. Right? And really, why should we leave it to one person? We all have a desire for our children to grow and learn about God. So we've got this team of people working together, and they're not doing it by themselves, right? They're just helping to coordinate. They're not the only ones working in children's ministry. They're the ones working to get us to work in children's ministry. And so they have a partnership. It's a partnership with a purpose. Their purpose is to teach our children about God and to grow their relationship with God. Let's talk about how we serve. Some of you may recognize some of these sites. I'm going to read Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. So when we work, what are we doing? These scenes are from when we serve a meal at the Impact Church of Christ. Our congregation does about twice a year, right? And for those of you who don't know, various congregations around the Houston area volunteer, and every Sunday there's a fellowship meal provided there by another congregation. And we take 2 Sundays. I think we have coming up at the end of March is our next one. But what happens is Emmett Gaines gets down there early squirrely, starts cooking chicken and some green beans and some mashed potatoes. A lot of people here volunteer to prepare brownies. They bring them to the church building. Some volunteers pack those up. After worship, we drive down to Impact, and then we all work together to serve that meal. Right? And it's a lot of working together. A part of I don't have a job right now, But when I do have a job, I'm looking at suppliers and vendors, and I've visited so many factories and assembly areas and distribution centers through my time all over the world. And what am I looking for when I go on behalf of the company I'm working for? What do you think I'm looking for when I'm looking at an assembly area? Huh? Teamwork, but I'm looking for efficiency, right? Are they using 20 people to do a job they could do with 15, right? Because I know those extra 5 people cost me money, right? So that's one of the things I'm looking for when I go visit these other companies. But when we go to work at the impact mill, am I looking at efficiency? No, I don't care. It's not about efficiency. In fact, you will hear me talk about the opposite of efficiency. If you see the picture up here in the upper right, Chris is carrying 1 plate of food. You see there on the left, Nick is carrying 1 plate of food. He's got 2 hands. You don't have to be an industrial engineer to know you can be more efficient by carrying 2 plates instead of 1, right? But we do that on purpose. Because if I carry 1 plate, I'm going up to my brother and I can greet them with care and compassion while I hand them my food, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about the efficiency, it's about the message. It's about the love. I want to deliver that food with love, not with efficiency. And so while I am working for a secular company, I'm going for efficiency because I like to stay employed, right? But here, my purpose is not efficiency. I want the people we're serving this food to feel the love of Christ as we serve that food. Some of us go work at, in fact, I'm going this afternoon. Eric and I are going to CCA, at Core Civic, to teach a lesson there. We had a few months ago, Eric and I showed up at Core Civic to teach our lesson, and we did our normal thing, check in, did the whole metal detector, make sure we're not sneaking in any contraband, and we get escorted in there to the chapel, and no detainees came to worship. 0. That's okay. The next month, when it was our turn, neither one of us said, we want to make sure there's people there before we go. We showed up. Right? And we showed up, and I think this time there was 1. But he was baptized. Right? Only lesson I've ever taught was 100% response rate. Right? And then another time we came and there was only 1. The last time I think there was 12 or 13, and now we'll probably see a little bit more today. But we're not looking at how many men. I've been there when there's 48 people there, right? And I've been there when there's 0. But we're still going to go. We're still going to show up. Because it's about the message. It's not about the numbers. Right? It's about that one Sunday where 1 man showed up and he was baptized. The angels were rejoicing in heaven. Even though if you look at all the other efficiency metrics the world looks at, it was inefficient. But it was not inefficient for him. Right? Another time there was only 1 there. He had already been baptized. But he was uplifted from our presence there, right? He's going through one of the most difficult trials of his life. He's detained. He may get deported, right? And he was there encouraged by 2 men who came to teach him about the Bible. So again, it's when we're working together, what are we working together for? We're working to show people love, not just our love, but the love of Christ. That's ultimately what we want to do. Okay. We're going to look at Philippians 1, 27 through 28. Only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or am absent, I may hear of you that you are standing firm in one spirit, with one mind, striving side by side for the faith of the gospel, and not frightened at anything by your opponents. This is a clear sign to them of their destruction, but of your salvation, and that from God. Part of our manner of life being worthy of the gospel of Christ. Now, this doesn't say worthy of salvation, right? We're saved. If we've confessed Jesus and repented of our sins, we are saved, right? But I want to live in a manner worthy of that salvation. I'm going to fall short, but I'm going to do my best to hit it, right? And part of that striving to live in a manner worthy of that gospel is to stand side by side. And what does it mean to stand side by side? You know, if you watch a football game, right? What the offensive line, when they're blocking for somebody, how are they standing? Side by side. And if one of them fails, they all fail, right? Just ask the Kansas City Chiefs from a couple weeks ago, right? They're a great team, but even they make mistakes, right? When one person misses, it affects the rest of the team. What they would have been familiar with in this time is the Roman army was very effective. That's why the Romans were controlling Jerusalem and Israel and the whole area. But the army was very good at fighting side by side. The Roman soldiers were extremely disciplined. When they went into battle, didn't matter what the guy next to them was, whether they had met him yesterday or they'd served with him since they'd first been a new recruit. They stood side by side and fought side by side. It made the Roman army incredibly efficient and incredibly ruthless, right? For a cause that is not good, but it was extremely effective because they would fight side by side and work for each other. Paul is saying, let's take that great technique that's used for a purpose that we don't like, but let's use that to further the gospel. If we're working side by side, if we're working with each other, right? If we're looking out for each other, thinking, how can we help each other? We can have that same effectiveness, but for promoting the gospel. Our goal is not world domination. Our goal is world salvation. So let's use those same principles of working side by side to do that. And don't be frightened. You know, it's not as scary. You know, the first time I went to Core Civic, it was nervous. Tell you what, when you walk in that building and they lock the doors behind you, it's the first time it's a little bit nerve-wracking. You know, but the first time I went with Britt Jones and Alan Martin, okay? So I was going there with somebody that I was familiar with, that I could trust, right? And so since then I've gone with people who've gone in for their first time. Now I'm the person they can trust. We can go do that side by side and then also have that work. Yes, Jenna? Uh-huh.
Natalie. And between Lisa and Susie
Right,
But she was next to me and says,
right,
I need to do that. Well, I know what Lisa had been doing with her.
right.
And so just by encouraging her, with knowing what they were doing, it gave her the incentive to go ahead that day and obey the gospel.
So what Diane, for those of you who couldn't hear, Diane mentioned Lisa Reed has a French speak student, Natalie. And Lisa's been a great, but she's had people working by her side. She's had Susan Ellis working with her. She's had Diane working with her, right? And when Natalie decided to obey the gospel, she wasn't with Lisa, she was with Diane. But she still made the decision. Right? And I think that's a beautiful example of people working side by side for the same purpose, the same goal. The same goal was to show Natalie love. Not only just the love of imperfect people, but the love of Christ is what we're ultimately trying to do. So as we're going to try to encourage more service, more working together. I just come back from the same deployment I mentioned earlier. We were there for 6 months and 4 days, but who's counting? I've been home, yeah, Christy was counting. I'd been home for a couple of weeks, kind of gotten used to being back home again, and I'd heard announcements at church about a teacher training class, but I pretty much ignored it because I thought I was too young. I was only 26, right? And one of the elders literally put his arm around me and said, Wes, I'd like for you to go to this teacher training class, right? And I'm like, oh. I said, am I too young? He said, no, you're not too young to start. And he helped guide me through that teaching. So if you see an elder walking up to you like this, know we're going to ask you to do something, okay? We may just be wanting to give you a hug because we love you and we care about you. But we might ask you to do something, but don't run away. We're not going to ask you to do anything you can't do, okay? So we'll kind of look back at some of the things that we've covered, right? One thing I really appreciate from Jay's lesson was the signs of a healthy church. A healthy church meets members' needs. It reaches out to our community, grows and builds itself up. It ministers outside the body and within the body. This is what we want to do together as partners. The encouragement, working together as partners is encouraging. Now, we still need to do some intentional encouragement, right? But just working together. Some of you that I feel closest to are the people I've served with, right? I love every member of this congregation, but the ones I know better and the one that we feel closest to, I guess you could say, is people that we've served with, people that we've gone on mission trips with, or we've gone on to serve at Impact, or we've worked with cleaning up after Hurricane Beryl. You grow that closeness, you grow that encouragement, right? You learn more about each other. You learn what to look for. You learn how we can encourage people in those times. But also just working together is a form of encouragement. We're talking about the work of elders. We're also talking about faith, growing, faith showing itself in service, and our service growing our faith. Who wants to grow their faith? I do, right? I want to grow my faith. And so service will help me grow my faith. And also, I think Wes did a great job of putting out there the fields are ripe for harvest. There are people who want to hear the gospel. There's people who need to hear the gospel. There are some people in this congregation who who have recently, learned about this thing called the gospel, and it's so refreshing to talk to them and to see their excitement for the gospel. I was baptized over 40 years ago, and sometimes we kind of take it for granted when we've been walking with Christ for a long time. Sometimes we're not as excited about it as we were when we were first baptized. To me, it's refreshing to be around these people who are new to this great thing. Like, oh yeah, I have this too. I need to be excited about sharing it with others as well. How can I serve? How can I help spread this to more people? And in Ephesians 2:10, we were put here to do good works. That's why we're here. That's why God has us here. That's why God has us where we are. Right? Recently, I applied for a job that I met every single qualification they listed. And they rejected me without even an interview. Right? And I was a little bit frustrated by that. But my sweet wife reminded me, maybe God's protecting you from something. Maybe that's a job, if I took it, I wouldn't be able to serve God. We've got to pray about this. We have to move forward. We've got to do His will. So we were put here to do good works. I want to encourage everyone, let's do them together. Look for ways you can serve. If somebody asks you to serve, try to say yes. You can't always say yes. I know things get in the way. But my ask of you is try to say yes. Look for ways to say yes. And if you can't find one, that's okay. Right. Yes? Sure.
I just want to say, like, the flip side of the coin, everybody gets in places where we can't give.
Right.
Like, when we started our business, I could not be a giver.
Right.
Nobody would want me to because my attitude was not what it should have been. So I was more of a taker in that season. I just think we need to, and we need to know there's going to be those times,
Yep.
but we need to stop and think, what are the examples? What was Jesus' example? It was to serve. And it's okay if we have to take for a little while, but we need to stop and look realistically. Are we taking more or are we giving more? And we're always going to have different seasons, but overall, I want to be a servant. I want to follow the example Jesus set.
So Shara brings up a fantastic point. So thank you, Shara. She mentioned that there's been a season in her life where she couldn't serve due to circumstances in her life, right? But it was temporary, right? But she wants to look overall, is she serving? I can tell you in our own life, right? 24 years ago, our second son was born and was in the hospital for a week. So we had a 4-year-old boy and a newborn in the hospital. We were not serving. We were being served by this wonderful family here. Right? There was one night where Christy had to spend the night in the hospital because she was sick, and the ladies of this congregation took shifts caring for the baby, changing his diaper, bathing him. All Christy had to do was feed him, right, so she could get well. This congregation helped us in ways that we cannot describe and we will never forget. Right? And so, yes, we all have times in our life where we need to be served, right? But as a result of that time, we've learned how to serve others. We can help others, right? When we go those times where maybe we need the help, we learn how to serve others. And I think it makes us better at that. So, again, thank you, Shara, for bringing that up. That's a great addition to the lesson. I really appreciate that. I think we are we're out of time. So if you will join me in prayer.